Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for NFTA's virtual webinar on the Bailey Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project. My name is Nicole Hill. I'm a senior transportation planner at the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, and I am the project manager for this project. Next slide, please. The NFTA, along with partners like the City of Buffalo, are taking the next steps to bring transit improvements and infrastructure investment to the Bailey Avenue corridor. The map located on this slide shows the Bailey Avenue corridor, which spans 7.5 miles from University Station at Main Street in the north and South Park Avenue in the south. The 13 proposed intersections are shown here with red circles. This webinar is the third meeting in a series of open houses where the NFTA is excited to educate the community on what the Bailey Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project is and the previous efforts that led to this. During the webinar, we will share what was learned from studying the existing conditions and what we have heard from stakeholders, the survey, and the ambassador program. We are asking for input on the project elements being presented today, especially station designs and locations. The NFTA is hoping to generate excitement and continue engagement about the proposed improvements to the transit service surrounding infrastructure along Bailey. I would like to now introduce Tanya Zwahalan from Highland Planning for some housekeeping.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. I just wanted to share a couple things. First, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted to the project website, which is baileyavbrt.com, after the meeting. Secondly, we had two in-person meetings a week ago tonight on Thursday and last Saturday. And tonight's presentation includes all the information that we shared at that public meeting, and the boards from that public meeting are already posted at baileyavbrt.com. So if you wanted to take a closer look at the slides or any of the information you're going to see tonight, you're welcome to go take a look at that. And if you look at the image on this slide, you can see there's an icon that says open house information. If you click there, you'll find the boards. And then lastly, we're going to be using the chat and the Q&A and some polls tonight, and we would love for you to be active participants of this meeting. We're going to be asking you questions the whole way through the meeting, so heads up on that. We also would love to encourage you to submit your comments by email after this meeting, and you can send those to baileybrt@nfta.com. And we're looking for feedback on the information that we're sharing tonight by February 28th. A little bit more housekeeping for any of you that haven't used Zoom lately. We're going to be using the polls tool, and we want you to share feedback. I think we have 5 polls tonight. So when those pop up on your screen, we're going to ask you to choose one answer. So it's multiple choice questions, and you're choosing one. And that's all you have to do is just answer and submit. And then we're going to be sharing what the rest of meeting attendees said to that answer throughout the night. So watch for those. If you want to turn on closed captioning on your Zoom, the green button, you can press that green button and you'll see that across the bottom of your screen. There's also a Q&A feature. That's the red circled with the question mark there. You can submit a question to us, and we'll have a couple people looking at the Q&A and the chat feature and collecting your input as we move through the night. And then if you don't have a question, but you want to share a comment, you can use the chat feature as well. I don't see that we have anyone who has joined us by phone, so that's great. It looks like everyone is using Zoom to join us. So, but I wanted to share, if there was anyone on the phone, I was going to share that they can use *9 to raise their hand and *6 to unmute themselves. So first poll, Julie's going to launch this poll. We'd love to know, of the people who have joined us tonight, there's 27 people, are you a Metro rider? And if you would answer that, yes or no. I see the answers coming in very quickly. I see we have a lively and responsive group of people here tonight, so that is exciting. I'm going to give it a minute to see if anyone else wants to answer. Thank you so much for being so responsive. Almost everyone has answered. Give it maybe 10 more seconds, Julie. 82% participation rate in this poll. That is thrilling to me. Okay, so now we're going to share the results of the poll, and you should see that 54% of you are Metro riders and 46% of you are not. So pretty even split with riders taking the majority. So thank you so much. So glad to have you here. And now we know who we're talking to. And I'll hand it back.
Thank you, Tanya. The agenda for today's webinar includes an introduction to the Bailey Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project, where we will discuss details on what Bus Rapid Transit is, an overview of the engagement, and share what we have learned through the project's traffic transit and roadway analysis. Next, Michael from Creighton Manning will discuss the project elements. Michael and I should say, will discuss project elements like station design, transit priority features, pedestrian improvements, and streetscape typologies. And then Michael will present on the proposed concepts for each of the 13 intersections identified as locations for these BRT stations. We will then wrap up the webinar with the planned next steps for this project. Tanya from Highland Planning will continue to run through a couple of polls and questions throughout today's webinar, so keep an eye out for that. And Stephanie Hyde and Leanne Voigt, also from Highland Planning, will be managing the chat and question and answer. So now we will introduce the project. Next slide, please. BRT is being implemented on to improve the transit service and rider experience on one of the busiest routes on the NFTA metro system. Bailey Avenue was studied for transportation and infrastructure improvements in the past. This includes being identified as a corridor in the East Side Corridor's Economic Development Fund due to its connections to major employers, community-based assets like community centers, places of worship, and access to education and job training resources. The Bailey Avenue Corridors Improvement Study also analyzed existing transportation infrastructure along Bailey and developed alternative transportation options to improve mobility. This included enhanced bus service along the corridor, investments to upgrade infrastructure, pedestrian safety, and improvements to the public realm. The recommendations for various elements of the bus rapid transit system were included in the study, where 3 alternatives at various levels of service were noted, and alternative C is the basis for the planning and the design for the Bailey Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project. Additionally, the City of Buffalo has also been working to develop design alternatives for Bailey Avenue from Winspear to East Sullivan Avenue for their multi-phased Build Back Bailey project. The NFTA has been coordinating with the city on this project, especially for those intersections that overlap with both projects, like Minnesota and Kensington Avenue. And also the GBNRTC's Moving Forward 2050 Update Plan serves as the region's metropolitan transportation plan, also identifies goals of enhancing mobility and transit options as a goal of the Buffalo Niagara region. This plan specifically also identifies the Bailey Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project in a list of projects that meet the objectives of the Moving Forward 2050 plan. Based on all of this prior planning work, the NFTA applied for federal and state funding to plan, design, construct, and implement bus rapid transit on Bailey Avenue. The funding sources are identified here in this table with a lot of really great opportunities for investment. Next slide, please. A purpose and need statement is a core part of planning large projects. They help define the issues and explain how the project will address them. The purpose and need are identified through an existing conditions analysis that looks at ridership, demographics, development opportunities, connections to other transit modes, as well as existing plans, which we previously just discussed. The purpose of this project is to provide faster, more efficient, high quality transit service and improve safety, access, connectivity, and quality of life in the corridor. Next slide, please. The need for this project is to improve transit service and experience for a high transit ridership corridor, encourage transit use and connections to employment, education, and activity centers, as well as encouraging compact transit-oriented development that is accessible and pedestrian friendly. The expanded purpose and need statements for this project can be found on the open house boards, which are located on our project website. They are really great, and I suggest taking a look at those. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you're probably wondering, what is BRT? Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT, is a bus-based transit system that includes new schedules with more frequent service, transit priority features like special signals and bus lanes for faster buses, and high-quality stations with amenities for enhanced passenger experience along a dedicated corridor. BRT systems from around the country were investigated as part of this project, and the team used peer BRT systems to help inform the features and designs for the Bailey Avenue project. These images on the slide show typical BRT features like near-level boarding at Metro Transit in Madison, Wisconsin, queue jumps and branding at CDTA in Albany, and a bus-only lane at Indigo in Indianapolis. The Bailey Avenue BRT project will also include pedestrian safety improvements like sidewalks, crosswalks, and ADA ramps, and upgrades to the streetscape like lighting and trees. Next slide, please. So the Bailey project will include those transit priority features to reduce travel times. Some examples of the upgrades being included in this project are shown here, including enhanced stations, special transit traffic signals that include treatments like queue jumps, transit signal priority, and dedicated bus lanes in select locations. The project will also include more frequent and reliable low no emission buses, as well as pedestrian improvements at crosswalks and streetscape improvements along the corridor to make the corridor safer. The project with associated improvements, sorry, the project with the associated improvements will provide better transit service and repair public infrastructure in ways that will support further investments in communities along the corridor. NFTA Metro is dedicated to working closely with all members of the community to develop the Bailey Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project, and wants to make sure that all those who live, work, study, shop, worship, and travel in the corridor and keep them informed and included in the project. I will now let Tanya discuss the next poll.
So we are about to share a bit of information about what we've heard from members of the community so far, as we've conducted a lot of outreach beginning in November and December and in January. But before we do that, we want your unbiased answer. What improvement would you most like to see on Bailey Avenue? So Julie's going to launch this poll, and you'll see that our options, this is a transit agency having a public meeting. So you'll see that our options talk a lot about transit, but there's also options around cars and space to park and access to businesses. If there's not an option here that resonates with you, or you have another idea, you're welcome to use the chat and let us know the improvement I'd most like to see on Bailey is. I see people are answering though. Thank you so much. This is poll 2 of 5. Great response rate. We've slowed down a little. Maybe we wait another 15 seconds here. Okay, Julie, I think that might be it. So let's end the poll and share our results so everybody can see. It looks like the majority of people, 31%, said calmer traffic. Next was 23% said more sidewalks, repaired sidewalks. 12% said faster buses. 12% said more buses. And then we did hear from a couple of people that says easier to get to businesses and better for those using wheelchairs, scooters, walkers. So really, someone answered each one of our options. And then I'm just going into the chat to see more buses was an answer in the chat. Thank you, William. And there's no room or option to advocate for bike lanes. Okay, thanks very much for that. Heated sidewalks. Okay, thanks everybody for answering that. Oh, we have a comment. Why have you chosen to use buses instead of electric rail service? The world is going electric. Another person saying bike lanes for sure. All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to go back to Nicole.
Yes, thank you for those responses. And based on our previous survey that we launched at the end of last year, a lot of the sentiments felt and the participants here were also felt through our survey responders from that survey. The purpose of this survey was to assess community needs and desires related to the Bailey Avenue project. The top three improvements identified by the survey respondents were faster buses, calmer traffic, and also more buses. Um, After analyzing the survey data, four major themes were found, which were greater bus frequency, a safer corridor, infrastructure improvements, and cleanliness and comfort. The results from this survey showed that the same concerns identified in previous studies were also still being felt among the community. And based on that, we were able to incorporate those different elements into the designs of the Bailey Avenue BRT corridor. And we will discuss those details further in today's webinar. So thank you everybody for your comments on electrification of buses and things like that, because those are going to be discussed in a little bit. Next slide, please. Engagement is one of the most important parts of this project, and the NFTA is dedicated to ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to play a role in the planning and uh, the way this project continues to develop, especially those who may have been excluded in previous efforts. The NFTA created an equity and inclusion plan as well as a public participation plan to help guide all aspects of engagement and community involvement. The full version of these plans can be found on the Bailey Avenue BRT website, but the public participation plan is used to target the different types of engagement activities, which include various stakeholder groups, and the equity inclusion plan outlines the strategies that will be used to achieve the equity and inclusion goals of this project. These will also help influence the design and implementation of the various engagement activities. The team has been working on engagement efforts since the summer of 2024, including a variety of in-person activities. The project team participated in 20 tabling and pop-up events, 8 community meetings, which are still ongoing, but these community meetings are shown with white X's on the map on the right of your screen here, and 5 key stakeholder group meetings. The team has also sent out direct mailers throughout the community, which you may have received, to help inform residents and businesses on what BRT is and what to expect with the Bailey BRT project. Additionally, the NFTA has launched an ambassador program where community members were hired to help educate the public about the project, build relationships, and support the consultant team with outreach and distribution of project materials. Some of these materials include fact sheets, posters, door hangers, and the ambassador program is designed to ensure representation and accessibility for all neighborhoods along Bailey. This evening, we are very lucky to have invited Greg Robb and Asha Brown to come and share their experiences of being a community ambassador. Greg, would you like to introduce yourself?
I think I unmuted myself. Oh, there I am. I assume you can hear me okay?
We can hear you,
Yeah, hi,
Greg.
my name is hi. My name is Greg Redd. I was hired as an ambassador and specifically assigned to the southern end of the Bailey Avenue project. But I also did community meetings, tabling events, and I have to say that I really enjoyed doing it. I really like talking to the people that I never met or never knew to find out what they were thinking about. And the thing that most impressed me is that people had excellent questions, some of which I couldn't answer, but they also had some good insights about the things that we should do to the project, and that was most appreciated. All in all, it was just a really good event. Love to hear from the people, and I love to watch how their ideas have been incorporated into this project as we move along. So, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. That was really nice. Asha, would you like to share your experience of being an ambassador?
Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Yes? Okay. Okay, my name is Asha. I also did some tabling with Greg, and it was a very good experience meeting different people who live in the neighborhood. A lot of people didn't know what was going on and didn't know about the project. So it was kind of fun to, get their feedback on things that they would be interested in seeing. And I think I really liked mingling with the community. um, this was a great opportunity for me because I was able to, give to the community, learn some things from the community, and kind of figure out what my lane will be as far as, working in the community. So I thought it was, tabling and everything is a great opportunity, not just for us to share the information, but to also get insight from people so that we can build a project that is, based on the actual community.
Awesome. Thank you, Asha. And I agree with your sentiment. It's really nice to actually get that hands-on connection with the community in which we're trying to serve. So thank you both for sharing. We can go to the next slide, please. So as I previously mentioned, we've done a lot of studying of the existing conditions throughout the corridor to help inform the next steps of this project. So the project team has reviewed transit data to ensure that the recommended locations of the BRT stations from the prior studies still provided the desired transit benefits we were hearing from the community. The team investigated the Bailey corridor and confirmed that the proposed station locations would still have the highest ridership and offer multiple transfer opportunities to other routes and destinations along the corridor. The density maps on the right here show the ridership by stop for both the northbound and southbound trips, with the larger circles representing the locations where the most people were getting on and off the bus. Ideal BRT stations are located near key destinations like job centers, school, shopping centers, and are spaced further apart than local buses to allow for time savings benefit. Next slide, please. The team has also reviewed crash data at signalized intersections that experienced more than one fatal or serious injury or crash and are in the proposed BRT station locations. The density map on the right here shows a total number of crashes by intersection along Bailey Avenue, where the larger circles again represent locations where there is the highest number of crashes in this case. The intersections with the highest number of crashes were also identified as priority locations by the GBNRTC or Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council as part of their federally funded Safe Streets for All project. NFTA is working with the city of Buffalo to improve safety for travelers, for all travelers at these intersections. And the 7 intersections here are laid out, which are East Delavan, Genesee Street, Walden Avenue, Broadway, William, Clinton, and Seneca Street. Next slide, please. Based on the previous planning and community feedback, infrastructure improvements were identified as important pieces of this project. To inform the Bailey Avenue BRT concept development, a corridor assessment was conducted that analyzed sidewalks and curbs, roadways and pavements, pedestrian ramps, and traffic signals. The maps to the right are the results of this assessment and outline the current sidewalk and pavement conditions along the Bailey corridor. And using the results from this work, the NFTA will work with the City of Buffalo to make upgrades where possible along the corridor. If you are interested in looking further into these maps and the specifications, you can also find these in the project boards listed on our website. I will now let Tanya introduce the next poll.
Okay, great. So this actually isn't a poll. This is a question for the chat because it is open-ended. So the polls are going to be multiple choice, and there's going to be some open-ended questions. You just heard about a little bit of what we heard from our survey and what we've heard from out in the community and the existing conditions. But we'd like to know, is there anything else we should know about existing conditions in the corridor? And I think I want to highlight a comment that just came in. So use the chat and let us know if there's anything you think is really important for us to understand about existing conditions. Doug wrote in, Most frequent buses is the most important, including on the weekends. Infrequent buses make transit unusable for meeting appointments. So that's really speaking to the need of the project. Bad street lights, lights out or no lights. The intersection at South Park and Abbott and Bailey is chaotic. It needs bike lanes. Just give it a couple more minutes here, or as an ambassador, I'm hearing a lot about drivers with concerns about the idea of a single lane of traffic and an increase in buses on Bailey Avenue. So keeping traffic moving is something that's important. I don't know if this is in your scope of the project, but it's very dangerous to bike ride on Bailey. Snow removal and illegal dumping was a popular issue from residents. Okay. How will this interact with the 12 and the 13 routes on the north end of the corridor? Maybe we can cover that as we go through cross-section buses, Michael. Someone wrote, I'm not sure if there are any existing traffic lanes on Bailey. And then I'll take this last one. The bend near Dingens is very slippery due to the grade of the road and becoming a wide open area with wind-blown snow. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you all for that input. It's really great. So next we're going to discuss the project elements that I think will answer some of the questions and comments that we just received. Next slide, please. So here is a rendering on this slide of our proposed BRT stations as well as the mobility hubs. Based on what we've been hearing from the public, each station will include weather protection, lighting, heating, travel information, and branding. There's also going to be METCO ticketing machines at each of the stations to allow for cashless onboarding, which will help continue or keep the speed of the buses without having to worry about cash boarding. Additionally, some of the features not shown in this particular graphic are the heated sidewalks that are going to be included in this project, cameras, integrated lighting, heating, and audible next bus announcements. Additionally, the proposed mobility hubs will include opportunities for various travel options to come together, and this includes features like bike wraps or mobility options like bike share or scooters. The next steps are to make decisions on the look and feel of these stations and mobility hubs based on colors, materials, and styles. So feel free to provide your input, especially on this particular graphic. And now I will let Michael discuss the transit priority features.
Thanks, Nicole, and thank you all very much for being here. It's exciting to see all your questions. So earlier in the presentation and the materials online, you'll see the little icons that we have, the little circles with graphics to illustrate the elements of the project. And as Nicole just covered, the station area, the station amenities is one of the first ones that are obviously very focused on riders and overall mobility with the mobility hubs. I'm now going to talk briefly about some of the transit priority features, the things that are intended to allow the buses to move more quickly through the corridor. So the first on the upper left-hand corner are called queue jumps or queue jump lanes. It's a mix of both a short bus-only lane, often complemented with a special traffic signal that's only intended for the bus. And so the goal of this feature that you can see more about on the materials that are on the website, but it essentially is a short little area where the bus can literally jump the queue. So get ahead of the vehicles that are waiting to get through an intersection. And again, they take advantage of this by using a a bus only or bus and right turn only lane, and then a special signal. Below that is a graphic about transit signal priority. And this again is technology that the bus communicates with the traffic signal to hold a green light longer so the bus can get through the intersection, or if the bus is approaching the intersection and the traffic signal is red for the bus, to call the next green phase in the cycle sooner. All of this is done safely. This technology is used around the world, around the United States, here in New York State, and it is an effective way to help buses move through corridors more quickly. On the upper right are bus-only lanes. There are 3 segments of bus-only lanes in this corridor. One in the northern section from Winspear to the VA hospital at Cole Road, and then 2 kind of sections that run near each other between Walden and Stanley, and then further south near Clinton. So these bus-only lanes, again, right turns are allowed from those lanes as they approach intersections. Driveways are still accessible. People can, access businesses and private properties along those lanes. But these are intended to help buses move more quickly through the corridor and are quite effective at doing so. And the last transit priority feature I'll talk about is really less about the physical infrastructure or technology. It's just about the service. So BRT, as Nicole had mentioned, one of the key features to help buses move quicker is fewer stops. The other is more frequent buses. So the intention that we're working off of right now is to aim to have buses roughly every 10 minutes in the peak period on the BRT, and then further apart during the middle of the day. Local service will remain, but maybe spread out a little bit more because of the increased frequency of the BRT service. And also what should be pointed out is that there will be new low emissions branded buses will be a feature of this project as well. The other, one of the other icons is about pedestrian improvements. So while not explicitly part of all BRT projects, NFTA in conjunction with the City of Buffalo and the prior work done by other efforts, other planning efforts, had identified the need for pedestrian improvements and general safety improvements in the corridor. As Nicole has discussed, there is a Safe Streets for All study going on. And the intention of this project is to, certainly at all of the BRT stations, but elsewhere in the corridor to the extent possible, improve things that support pedestrian safety and accessibility, like crosswalks, pedestrian ramps, push button signals. Where possible, there will be some bump outs which shorten crossing distances. So these improvements are also intended to be part of the project. And the last piece, kind of referred to as the streetscape. These are the improvements outside of the roadway that kind of add to the overall comfort, look, feel, safety of the corridor. These include things like street lights, benches, landscape elements, whether it's trees or planters. And in order to help identify what the right mix of these things are, NFTA kind of developed a typology, so to speak, that's really based on the land uses, the types of businesses and buildings in different parts of the corridor, and then it kind of applied a certain treatment. So this is just one example of the kind of strip commercial typology. There are others, a traditional kind of mix of commercial and residential, a pure residential typology, an industrial, and an institutional. So again, please refer to the detailed material on the website that were on the boards. But we want people to understand that in addition to the transit priority that comes with the BRT project, NFTA and the City of Buffalo will also look to make these other streetscape improvements as the work progresses. Okay, so now all of those parts and pieces, the stations, the transit priority features, pedestrian improvements, and streetscape. They all kind of come together in a place that we're referring to kind of as the station areas, often at intersections, though not exclusively. And as we go through these, we'll try and point out those elements. Specifically, we want to make sure people can kind of connect the dots from, oh, right, the station design that Nicole showed you, that's going to go in these places. If any one of the station areas or those intersections have explicit transit priority features. As of now, every signal is going to have the TSP feature, the transit priority signal feature, but you kind of can't see that. But some will have the other signal, the Q jump signal. And then again, we'll point out pedestrian improvements and streetscape improvements, which were in general, you can think of as being part of just about all of the station areas, and then expand beyond there to the extent possible. Oops.
And then I want to wake up everybody's typing hands because you've heard about the development of these concepts currently is based on what we've heard so far from the community members and existing conditions and previous studies. But we're going to go through all 13 station area concepts. And at each one, I'm going to be asking you, do you have any questions or comments? This is the most exciting part of the meeting because you're going to see what our team has been working on, and we really want to hear from you if you have any questions or you have any comments. So be patient with us. There's 13 of them. We're going to be moving from north to south along the corridor, and Michael's going to review these 4 features, and we really do want your feedback. So you can use the chat. I also want to say it might be hidden from you, but feel free, if you have a question, use the Q&A feature, and then we can either answer your question live or one of us might be able to type a response back and share it with everyone. If you don't see your Q&A button along the bottom of Zoom, click the More button. It might be hidden there, but you're welcome to use Q&A or chat. And Michael, I do have a question. If BRT stations include bike amenities, will they also include bike share hubs like Ready Bike? Can you answer that question?
Sure, that's a great question. I think Nicole briefly went over the idea of the mobility hub. So, mobility hubs are a term and kind of a treatment that exists all over the world, and every place kind of defines them differently. So NFTA is working with the city of Buffalo to kind of define what a mobility hub will be here in this corridor, and to the extent possible, whether it's an existing, we know the great bike share program that exists in the city of Buffalo, if there's the opportunity to have one of those stations integrated at certain BRT stations where it makes sense, that would be the option. If there isn't going to be a bike share station there, then the idea would be to have traditional bike racks. And if you, again, look at a little more detail on the boards that are online, you'll see that there's also some opportunities for other things like, there are those little kind of bike maintenance stations, so a pump and tools, or there could even be the possibility, we know the city of Buffalo, through their Smart Streets study a few years ago, had been kind of looking at what's the future in terms of e-mobility, and could there be charging stations for e-bike batteries or things like that. So it hasn't all been defined yet, but there are opportunities.
One other question, does this project include creating safe bike lanes? Is that part of this project?
I don't know, Nicole, do you want to speak to that, or do you want me to speak to it?
Yeah, I can speak to it, and if you want to add anything, feel free. But we are not going to be removing any existing bike lanes along the Bailey Avenue corridor, but we are not going to be introducing any new bike connections. We're staying within the right of way of this project, and we are not looking to have multiple modes that are bike and bus on one particular corridor, especially because the um, City of Buffalo's bike master plan has identified parallel streets and have already started implementing really safe and nice bike only lanes on one-way roads, which actually promote a little bit of a safer biking experience. But we are promoting connections to transit with those mobility hubs and opportunities to have your bike on the bus and lock it up at the bike racks near the stations.
You did great. I have nothing to add to that. Okay, so without further ado, I see it is 6:15. I think we're going to try and spend about 30 minutes on these, right? Which gets us to 6:45, which then leaves 15 minutes to wrap
Yep.
things up. But through this 30 minutes, I'm not going to be talking for 30 minutes. We will be pausing. Tanya will be helping field questions and kind of making sure we're moving along. So, okay. So the first location, University Station, is the first station and the last station kind of break from the mold a little bit because there are some unique things about them. The unique thing here is that this is an existing fairly large bus loop with connections to the Metro rail system. At this point, the BRT station could be built where the existing 19 is, kind of at essentially like 1 o'clock on the circle, if you will, in the current 19 stop location. It could be built much closer to the front door, or it could be built potentially up on the kind of upper shelf, the ridge, through the bus loop where there's also an entrance to the Metro rail station. At this point, it is envisioned that this would be a regular full BRT station and mobility hub. The details of this are still, of course, TBD in terms of the placement, but we would anticipate a large BRT station here with the mobility hub. So that I will pause.
Any questions or comments about University Station? I haven't seen any come in. Leanne did add a prompt here. You can use the chat. It's okay if you don't have any comments, but given that we have more than 50% of our attendees are Metro riders, we want to make sure we
There's something in the Q&A.
Yep. So integration with UB shuttles is one comment here. It makes more sense on the upper shelf. We do have a Q&A about enforcement. We're going to try to answer that in writing. Mickey, thank you for that. And the area near the door is a drop-off as currently labeled.
Understood. We're still kind of, this is great. We're looking for this exact kind of feedback. Since this is such a kind of new and big and exciting endeavor for NFTA, we were told to kind of be open to different ideas around the placement of the BRT here. So we understand how the placement within the loop currently works in terms of drop off and pickup, and why it can be advantageous to have the pickup kind of far as close as possible to getting out of the loop. But we just wanted to throw a few ideas out there. So it's good to hear. It's nice to hear the upper shelf. I don't know. I probably should have looked up how technically what NFTA refers to that area, but until I'm told otherwise, we'll call it the shelf.
And then one more comment, the 19 spot is okay as long as there is a BRT-like shelter. We need more shelters at the UB hub for all stops. Many don't have shelters. Thank you, Doug.
Great feedback.
Okay, I think we can move
along.
Yes.
Great. So this stop is Veterans Hospital at Cole Road, and on the southbound side. So just to let everyone know as we go through these, there is a north arrow up here in the upper right. The nature of the corridor, I realize it'll be a little confusing because the map on the right-hand side is running true north and south, north on the top, south on the bottom. But in order to fit the concept, stationary concept figures better, we decided to pivot it and turn things to run right and left. So on the map, north is to the top. On the figure, north is to the right. And so to the right here, you'll see on the southbound side, a full BRT station. On the northbound side, this is the end of one of the shorter bus lanes that runs from Winspear North here to the entrance to the VA hospital, which is on the kind of bottom part of the figure here. And NFTA has met with the VA hospital administration about integration of this design into the existing curb there. There's currently a bus shelter that's kind of cut out and stuck into the parking lot. Kind of open to kind of expanding the footprint here a little bit, make for a larger waiting area in the northbound, and same within the southbound. And then to the extent possible, again, upgrades to pedestrian infrastructure. And this section of the streetscape typology is referred to as the institutional section. It's, in this part of the corridor, you're sitting essentially between two big institutions, the VA hospital on one side and the university on the other. And while there recently was some upgrades to sidewalks and plantings, again, to the extent possible, we can add more. So I'll pause there. Oops,
Any comments?
Got ahead of myself. Yep.
Veterans Hospital, use the chat. Any questions, any comments, any reactions to this concept? Not seeing anything. Sunbaked seating, pounding traffic, needs complete overhaul. Thank you. No seating. Okay.
All right.
This concept should address that. Thanks. Go ahead, Minnesota.
Yep. So these next two, Minnesota and Kensington, just want to remind folks again that as you'll see here on this graphic, as you'll see if you go again, look through some of the boards, it'll be pointed out, as Nicole had pointed out, the city of Buffalo is currently engaged in a project which is referred to as Build Back Bailey. It kind of a full roadway redesign, streetscaping. The city of Buffalo and NFTA are working closely together. It just so happened that that project kind of got it started a little ahead of the NFTA's Bailey Avenue project, but there's lots of synergies between them. And so in basically from Winspear till Midway, so just north of Kensington, which you'll see on the next figure, a lot of the roadway improvements, sidewalk improvements, all of those things were already in the works from the city of Buffalo. And really here, in this case, at Minnesota, NFTA has been working with them to kind of figure out the best place to drop in the proposed BRT station. So the prior study had always called for BRT stations at Minnesota. Again, the city of Buffalo is advancing their design around streetscaping, sidewalk improvements. You'll see things here like bump outs or curb extensions that shorten the crossing distance. You'll see new striping to facilitate better left turns. And then on two of those curb extensions, this one on the what would be the west side of the corridors in front of the church, there'll be a BRT station. And then in front of, on the northbound side, in front of a convenience store, deli, there'll be a station as well. The gray boxes there are a little misleading. You'll notice in most cases the stations have a little more definition. This is just kind of an acknowledgement to the fact that the city of NFTA still is kind of working through some details here with the city of Buffalo, but basically it'll, the same BRT stations you're seeing in the other locations are almost certainly to be what will go in at these locations. So with that, I'll open up.
Any comments or questions? We do have one. I think this relates to the whole corridor. Every transit trip includes a pedestrian crossing requirement, either before or after the trip, or both. Pedestrian priority crossing signals are needed, including light cycle delays where appropriate. Thanks, Doug, for that comment. Is light cycle delays on the table for pedestrians?
Maybe you can, if you mean pedestrian phase, so the push buttons are called for at all of the intersections that NFTA intends to be making upgrades, which are almost certainly the ones where there are BRT stations, and then to the extent possible, other intersections as well. Is there enough space? The north-south sidewalks there are pretty narrow. So great question. That is why there are curb extensions here, or sometimes they're referred to as bus bulbs when they have a bus stop on them, also known as bump outs, curb extensions, whatever you might want to call them. That is the way the extra space is being made. And again, the City of Buffalo's Build Back Bailey project had already been proposing curb extensions there. It's just that we've stretched them a little bit longer to be able to fit a BRT station on them.
And then last comment, this is an intersection that is clogged with traffic. The traffic speeds are not that bad. It's actually one of the better intersections for pedestrians, which it sounds like is not good. Will these extensions be heated so they melt the ice for pedestrians?
The extent of the snow melt pads are not entirely decided. Generally speaking, the snow melt pads will be in the area of the stations. So they're really intended to melt the snow in the areas of the BRT stations. One of the things we heard pretty frequently is around maintenance of the snow removal from the bus stops and the existing shelters. And so if there are heated sidewalks, this is a great way to kind of reduce the need for extra maintenance near the BRT stations. So just to be clear, these are not entire sidewalk lengths of the entire corridor are heated sidewalks. The heated sidewalk will really be focused around the BRT stations.
I'm excited to see what this will look like in combination with the streetscape improvements of Build Back Bailey. Oh.
I think that, so our experience with snowmelt pads are that they work best when focused in the area where you're trying to keep it clear for people waiting for the bus, and really because of the overall expense, but also there's electrical equipment actually in the concrete, and the wear and tear over time, kind of outside of these defined areas, creates an expense and a liability. So for now, the snowmelt pads are really focused on the BRT station areas. But there are benefits that come from them, even when people are kind of just walking through. But we just want to be clear in setting expectations that these are not be heated sidewalks the entire length of the corridor. As for the businesses, the snowmelt pads will be, it'll be a relationship between NFTA and the City of Buffalo. The expense of installing the snowmelt pads will not be on the property owners. And to the extent possible, most of the work in the BRT stations will be hopefully within the public right of way. So that won't be on any private property owners. The BRT stations. Of course, upgrades to sections of sidewalk up and down the corridor will be a mix of things that are in the public right of way or not, but the City of Buffalo deals and NFTA deal with those kinds of interactions with property owners all the time. Yeah, that's a good question. Nicole is guessing if the 6s are related to the unmuting.
We will send him a message and ask them. Let's go to Kensington in the meantime here.
Fair enough. Great. Okay, so at Kensington, again, the Build Back Bailey project had originally, basically is kind of terminating in this area. And this again is a place where the City of Buffalo and NFTA kind of work together to coordinate on some features here. So I'll point out that there are bump outs again at the Kensington intersection to shorten crossing distances. Ramps will be upgraded. There'll be BRT stations on both the east and the west side of the northern part of that intersection. Here's an opportunity to point out one new feature that we haven't kind of seen yet in the corridor, which is a queue jump lane, a bus only queue jump lane. So the southbound buses will use the right lane to serve the BRT station there in front of the soon to be built Evergreen Medical Center. And then when they're done serving that station, they will be able to call, if it's not already green, they will be able to call for a queue jump signal, because as you'll see here, you have one lane going southbound feeding into one lane. And so to allow the buses to kind of get a head start, or to kind of quote unquote jump the queue, they will call a special signal that allows them to get in front of traffic southbound and then proceed further south. So that is something to call out. And then the cross section of the two-way left turn lane and all of those markings, those were already intended as part of the Build Back Bailey project. So as well as the curbside parking lane going north from Midway.
Any questions or comments about Kensington in particular? And Michael, we are running a little behind because we're at 4 of 13. And
Sheesh. Okay.
So we gotta.
Here we go. That's fine. So Langfeld Conley, I'll try and point out the most interesting or exciting things. Again, northbound has a queue jump. Bus only right turns are allowed in that curbside lane. And then we'll call a signal. There's pedestrian upgrades that are called for, and as well as the parking lane that will be maintained southbound.
Any questions or comments about Langfield Connolly? And I'll say, if we keep moving and you have a comment, just write the name of the station in the chat and we can circle back to it. But we do want to keep moving here.
Okay.
Not seeing any comments on this one.
Great. What I'll call out here at East Delavan, going back to something that Nicole had spoken about and I had spoken about, pedestrian safety in the corridor. So there are 7 intersections that GBNRTC has identified as priorities, and NFTA through their analysis, through our analysis, had also identified these as places where there had been a fatal and or serious injury accident. And so one of the things we were thinking about here is how to shorten some crossing distances and clean up the markings here. So that's one thing we kind of want to draw attention to, in addition to making sure that all the pedestrian signal heads are fully upgraded. And yeah.
Okay, I have a comment or a question on Kensington, one back. What's the approximate depth of the Kensington stop? And then for Delavan, are these typical urban crosswalks or are these hawk crosswalks like on Sheridan?
I apologize that I'm not familiar with Sheridan, but I am familiar with hawks. These would be traditional, typical signal, crosswalks that you'd get at a signalized intersection. Generally speaking, hawks are mid-block treatments. I don't think this would be an appropriate location for a hawk, because you would just use a regular traditional traffic signal. As for the depth of Kensington, would have to look that up and get back to you. By depth, also, I guess I should also clarify, do you mean the depth front to back of the station, or left to, the length of it from one end to the other?
Yeah, and Sean, if you have a concern, you could also clarify. He says front to back.
Yeah, we'll go look them up. I believe they're 15 feet front to back. Don't quote me on that. We'll get back to you though.
Thank you. And we're going to Genesee.
Genesee. Another location where there is a northbound queue jump, and also would want to call out the bump out. So in the northbound side, on the northeast corner, you'll see here a bump out to shorten the crossing distance. This again is another location that had been identified for pedestrian safety. This location, Genesee, also has a mobility hub, and would certainly want to have a nice treatment here. We know there's a significant number of transfers between the 24 and the 19. So, locations like this, we try and keep those things in mind. In this case, also the southbound 19 wouldn't be stopping near side anymore. It would run through the intersection and stop far side, so on the south side of Bailey, of Genesee, excuse me.
Any questions or comments about Genesee? One comment is another intersection needing a complete overhaul.
certainly we're going to try and do as much here as we can. All right. Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Johnson. Oh, went the wrong way. Okay, so Walden. Walden on the north west intersection, northwest corner of this intersection, there's a kind of a strip mall of sorts with the Signature Beauty Supply and the Polly Supermarket, P-A-L-L-I. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it's pronounced. So there may be slightly tighter area there for fitting in a BRT station, but NFTA does have a few different designs if needed. So that's something to call out. The other thing is, again, this would be a location for a mobility hub that's attached to the BRT station in the northbound side. And then south of Walden, we'd want to call out that essentially this is the start of one of the bus lanes. So there's essentially a bus lane that runs more or less from Walden all the way south through the Broadway intersection to Stanley. So want to call that out. One of the things that's also happening here is as the roadway kind of opens up, you know, this is an area that we were kind of, a lot of people talked about the need to improve safety here, and that lane markings, just kind of making the lane markings clearer, could go a long way to do that.
Any questions about Walden? We did get a comment in this section between Genesee and Walden, speeding, ignoring lanes. If not, let's go to Broadway. We're at 9 of 13.
Great. So here, coming into here, you'll see again the bus lanes are formalized, and the cross section still allows one lane in each direction with opposing left turns. And as of now, you know, redoing the crosswalks, adding pedestrian push buttons, upgrading the ramps, those are the primary pedestrian improvements. And then there will be a mobility hub on the southbound side.
A comment, we should note that the regular 19 will continue to run and stop at all stops, while the BRT will skip some stops to be faster. Thanks, Doug.
Excellent. Yeah. All right.
Any comments on Broadway? Comments or questions? And our next, we do have a poll coming up, so be ready for that.
Yep. So I'll try and be quick here, less focused on the details and just kind of the big picture. So the prior study had identified the 13 BRT stations. Our task this time around was to kind of validate those or confirm whether or not they still made sense in terms of ridership, connections, other infrastructure considerations. And our team, in conjunction with NFTA, thought it might be worth actually having an alternative to a BRT station at William, and that would be at Lovejoy Street. So the one bus goes across Lovejoy, turns, goes south on Bailey, and then turns again at William. So both stations would be able to serve connections or transfers to the one, but there were, you know, the case was made that Lovejoy is a little more residential. William is, you know, kind of a bigger and busier street and maybe less inviting to kind of wait for the bus. We are proposing a bus bulb on the northwest corner to accommodate a BRT station. And there would also be a queue jump at the William intersection, whereas the Lovejoy option would have bus bulbs for the bus to kind of stop, on those kind of curb extensions. So can open it up and see if people have thoughts. Should I just go right to the poll, Tanya?
I think let's go to the poll. So we have a question, and we're interested in your comments and any questions through the chat. But we have a specific question about this area of the corridor. Where do you think NFTA should place the BRT station in this part of the corridor? William and Bailey or Lovejoy and Bailey? And if you don't have an opinion, you don't need to answer this poll. But if you do, we'd like to know if this is a part of the corridor that you are using and you have an opinion about this. We'd love to hear from you. The chat is also open for any other questions or comments that you have. Let's see. We got 11 people voting. We'll give it maybe another couple seconds. In the chat, thinking about pedestrian safety and the fact there are some schools nearby, I think Lovejoy is safer. Here's our poll responses. So 77% of people tonight said William and Bailey, and then another 23% said Lovejoy and Bailey. So thank you for that. We also do have a question in the Q&A, which I think we could answer live. Oh, maybe it was just answered.
Yep, I think Nicole answered it.
Great. Yep. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. So leaving William down to Clinton, there are bus lanes, dedicated lanes. Those who are familiar with the corridor, this is also one of the more kind of industrial segments of the corridor. 2 lanes in each direction, relatively high speeds. So here, the bus lanes would be, providing a dedicated space for buses, also acting as a bit of a road diet to a certain degree, calming traffic, and trying keeping traffic to the center lanes. This is, again, want to point out that this is a place where there are bike lanes south of here, and there is no intention to remove those. So we just want to make sure that that's really clear. And as Nicole explained, the city's plans for north-south bike connections are being proposed on parallel streets like Comstock. But again, back to this intersection, looking at all of these ramps and crosswalk upgrades, as well as a mobility hub would be another key thing to point out here.
Any questions or comments about Clinton Street? Not hearing any. 643. Let's keep going.
Great.
2 more.
Seneca, again, very wide section here. There are bike lanes in both directions. Again, those will be maintained. Mobility hub on the southbound side. Nice full BRT stations. I think there's someone just had a comment about hopefully an increase in ridership. That would be great. As you look towards the southern part of the corridor, there are some longer stretches. And if you look at the figures, certainly ridership isn't as robust in some of these areas, but still lots of riders here and opportunities to make transfers to some key east-west connections as well. So,
any questions or comments about Seneca Street? How is Elk Street incorporated?
Elk Street is not a BRT station. Any local service that's currently stopping at Elk will continue to do so.
Thank you. Okay, last one. And we do have a poll coming up. So listen to Michael's descriptions of these examples of transit hubs, because we're going to ask you which one you like the best.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. So the prior study and NFTA had wanted us to think about, can we do something a little bit bigger, a little different to anchor the BRT line here? And there is kind of a turnabout across the street from Tops. I saw some comments earlier about the need for improvements at the intersection of South Park Avenue and Bailey and near Abbott. At this point, we're kind of with, of course, any pedestrian improvements or upgrades at that intersection will be considered as part of the project. But what we're looking for here is the idea of maybe using that space down there to incorporate a slightly larger footprint or kind of a larger kind of visual presence with a kind of a transit hub or mobility hub, of course, would also be included with larger canopies and shading and seating and things like this. So it also is a key location to facilitate transfers between the 23, the 14, the 16, and the 19. So I'll go to the next one, right?
Sure. Okay, so we're going to run a poll. Which of the concepts, which of the images do you like best for the southern end of the BRT line? Do you like the example of the gateway, which is shown on the left side? That's Schenectady, New York. In the middle is the Downtown Transit Center in Burlington, Vermont. Or on the right, there's the downtown bus station in Grand Junction, Colorado. So just based on the images and Michael's description of this southern end, here's our poll. Which one do you like the best? And I'd love for you to use the chat and tell us why. And any other questions or comments that you might have about this southern end. We got 53% of people who have participated. I'm gonna wait another couple seconds here to see if anyone else wants to answer. I think you can zoom in on the pictures if
Sorry if they're too small.
get a closer look. Okay. All right, we'll go with that. So the winner is the middle, Downtown Transit Center in Burlington. That's 60% of our people tonight thought that one was the best. Second, Gateway Schenectady, and looks like 2 people chose the downtown bus station in Grand Junction. People like Burlington because it's bigger. More coverage from the elements was another thing, and handles the most number of buses. Great. Thanks everybody for answering that poll. And now, you heard a lot. You heard a lot about the background of the project. You heard about what we've heard from the community, existing conditions. You got to see all 13 stations at the concept development and where the team is at this stage. But now generally, we would love to hear your feedback overall about the project. So in the chat, if you would, tell us what I like about the project, what you'd change about the project, what you'd add to the project. Any general comments that you might have? And if you could write in a complete sentence, then we'd have an understanding of whether you like it, you want it changed, or you want it added. Like efforts to calm traffic would add security to the project. Thank you. What I like about the project is the overall comprehensive improvements coming to Bailey for anyone who travels or lives in the area. I like that this project will hopefully calm traffic to a much needed corridor. Very nice job. Love the project. The most important is to not compromise on frequency, even on weekends. Thank you so much for being so active during this meeting. Any other last overall project feedback? What I would change is great focus on electric bike charging stations at all hubs. It is paramount to educate the public and all employees of changes. Yeah, greater focus on electric bike charging stations at all hubs. Thank you. Those are all great comments. I like the size of the station serving more riders. It's been the Wild West on parking anywhere anyone wants to, and it is completely unsafe. Thank you. It all sounds so exciting for Buffalo. Awesome comments. I love the project because it brings knowledge on traffic and buses and let people know that this project is not just for bus riders. We market that. A question, will BRT buses be maintained and stored nearby the corridor?
Nicole.
Hi. So Sean, to answer your question, will BRT buses be maintained and stored in nearby in the corridor? Yes, we are looking to store and maintain our buses at our existing facilities.
I will, if we have 2 minutes, I see some questions that maybe we could do a better job of explaining one or two things. So first off, we've tried to run through so much information. Security at the stations has certainly been considered. We've received a lot of feedback from stakeholders. There's a key stakeholder group. So as Nicole had mentioned, there is a plan to have security cameras at the stations to kind of help with making sure there's an awareness around incidents, and the design of the stations themselves are intended to be as transparent as possible, so people are able to kind of see around them and are aware of that. And then we also heard and saw about lighting and the importance of lighting and the safety that people feel from having a well-lit area.
Thank you. One comment, I worry that the queue jump lanes will have some cars trying to tailgate the bus to jump into traffic.
So if you're worried about right turner, so generally speaking, the queue jump lanes are going to be in the right turn lane. So if you are a right turner sitting behind a bus that's serving a bus stop, it would be very similar to what happens today, which is you see a bus pulling up to the curb to get ready to serve that bus stop. You may continue in the through lane and kind of turn right around in front of a parked bus. Or if you are a right turner and it is a red light, you would be better off waiting behind the bus, because in the new system, in the new project, the buses will clear that intersection before anyone else. They'll either get a queue, they'll get the queue jump signal, and then you'd be able to proceed right. So not you, but a vehicle, I should say.
One add ambassadors at the stations to help people who might be new to BRT when service launches. I enjoyed the discussion and images in the project. Cameras will only help when working and actively watched, need regular human patrols. Will there be digital signs in the station showing when incoming buses will be arriving?
I can answer a couple of those questions really quick. First of all, Christine, I love the comment about the ambassadors to help people navigate the new system. I think that's a great suggestion. Sarah, to your point that cameras only work when working, we're going to be making sure that these cameras are working. And also we have our Metro Police Force that will also be patrolling throughout the corridor. You can kind of compare that to how we navigate the metro rail stations. These are going to be treated in the same way that those are. And then additionally, there will be digital signage in the stations as well as audible announcements from when those next buses will be arriving.
Okay. Thank you for all those comments. I think we can go to project schedule. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah.
So and I'll let Nicole jump in if I misspeak here on any of this, but this is generally speaking the project schedule. So when NFTA put out the call for this work, it was broken into 4 phases. So Creighton Manning, along with our partners at Highland and other firms, are in what's called phase 1 here. This is the pre-engineering, and this phase of the project has a few different engagement activities. We're currently in one right now. That follows from the concept development work, and here we're getting all this feedback on this. And then after that, we will take this feedback as well as additional transit planning work, additional traffic analysis, and other kind of needs assessment around the buses that should be procured and where they should go, and all that will kind of come together in a final document that is part of this concept update, and that will all be done in this orange phase by basically the spring, by June, give or take. And then after that, assuming there's we have all the ideas worked out, which I think we will, they'll move from this pre-engineering phase into engineering or design, and that will proceed from the middle of 25 into the middle of 26. And then there'll be contracts put out for construction to begin in 2026, as well as other contracts that will go out for procuring buses and equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And then that construction will proceed from 26 through until the end of 27, with the hope of, with the goal, excuse me, of service launching in 2028.
Awesome. One more poll. And while this is coming up, I want to thank Liz, our ASL interpreter, for being with us here tonight. The last poll is, do you understand the Bailey BRT project better than you did previously? So thank you for the investment of your 87 minutes with us, and would love to know. And if there's something that is still confusing to you or you don't know the answer to, feel free to put that in the chat.
Apologies.
No, in the chat.
Hit the wrong button. Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's okay.
You can just quickly see everything we saw.
How many slides? We don't want to know.
Too many.
So many.
There we are. Sorry.
Julie, I think we've heard from almost everybody here. So 94% of people say yes, they understand the project better. 6% say no. I'm curious if that is because they knew about it already, and they came to one of our public open houses, or if they still have questions. If there are still questions, happy to answer those. And just a reminder, we are would love to receive your feedback by email at baileybrt@nfta.com. This recording will be on the project website after this meeting. All the boards from our open houses are there. Sorry, Nicole, I stole your slide.
You're totally fine. Thank you for reiterating where the recording will be. And I just wanted to thank everyone for attending this evening's webinar. We really appreciate all of your input and participation. And to Tanya's point, we're still accepting comments, and we can continue to accept comments up until February 28th. And we definitely are welcoming all the input that you have to provide us. So thank you, everybody. And with that, I will say, as long as there isn't any more questions, we're okay to end this evening's webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.